very, very important webinar. Just so everyone's fully aware, we're going to be recording this session. This has been part of a World Bank series, that we've been doing related to our, approach to data and how data is driving a lot of change, how data is becoming more inclusive, etc. So really, what we would like to explain on this session here, this is digital innovation for global food corporations, tracking environmental and social governance, ESG indices, and its impact on local farmers and fisheries. Really important area, which is very, very important to the World Bank Group as we operate, and of course to many who are connected to this session. We firmly believe, going forward, the whole of society, the whole of these integrations, the whole of these linkages between production and markets is changing. There's no such thing as business as usual now. We're looking for really strong innovation. So I think what's exciting about today, as we structure and we go forward on this session, we're going to be hearing about some of the new innovations, and we want to hear also from some of the supermarket type companies, the main food consumer facing organizations. What are they thinking? What are they seeing? Do they see these technologies as relevant? Do they see them as scalable? And so on. So there's a little bit of a challenge in this conversation as well. So I want people to look at it, in that spirit. So we, here, before I introduce the speakers and we go forward, I just want to say a few words about where we are operating. I'm Chris Brett. I'm the lead agribusiness specialist at the World Bank. I sit in the agriculture and food global practice, and I work mainly in the World Bank side, but I also connect very strongly to the International Finance Corporation. We want to leverage and bring in private sector more and more within the operations. Our clients are governments. But governments, of course, asking us how to bring in more investments. Our portfolio at the Agriculture and Food Global Practice is around about $20 billion. We push out a loan to governments between $3 to $4 billion per year. So it's a very, very big sounding portfolio. Now, if we look at that portfolio in detail and the areas that I focus on, I want to sort of just share with you that in our analysis, about 40% of our portfolio is going now into value chain development. And that's what's really relevant to this conversation. That value chain development is working directly with the smallholders, the farmers, and they are the private sector. They're demanding more access to resources, more connections to markets, more connections to food systems. So this conversation is going to be very, very important to us. So I'm going to just pause for a moment and ask Vivek, have you got this video you can show us for the next 3-4 minutes? And then we'll close.
Yes, sure.
So please connect that and I'll take over again. Thank you.
Our global agri-food system sustains the world's ever-growing population, creates millions of jobs, and is critical in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. But the global agri-food system is not fit for purpose and stresses the environment by generating up to 29% of greenhouse gases. And while there is an overabundance of food, 820 million people are undernourished worldwide. This is due to the global agri-food system being held back, partly by transaction costs and information asymmetries, which prevent profitable transactions. The agri-food system is complex, and it takes dozens of stakeholders and transactions to bring food from farmers to consumers. Transaction costs are incurred by business partners to find each other, determine sales conditions such as volumes, quality, and negotiating prices and return policies. Because of information asymmetries, which occur when one stakeholder has more or better information than another, traders and consumers cannot tell whether a product is high quality or meets their environmental or social standards. This costs the farmer profits, drives them to choose quantity over quality, often at the expense of the environment, and limits consumers' product choices. But through digital technologies and mass access to data, the world's agri-food system can overcome these obstacles and deliver healthy people, a healthy planet, and healthy economies. The World Bank is a trusted partner in helping countries' agri-food systems navigate the digital revolution. Our new report provides insights into the potential of leveraging digital technologies to transform the agri-food system. Digital agriculture can create societal gains with the 3 E's: economic efficiency. Through farmers being able to access multiple markets and lower costs through improved price discovery, buyer-selling matching, improved traceability, and quality control. Equity, through the inclusion of smallholder farms and marginalized populations. And environmental sustainability, through reducing food waste, better resource management, and rewarding environmentally friendly practices. Creation of and access to data allows new ways to evaluate small-scale farmers and agribusinesses' creditworthiness, improve their access to rural finance, and allows the design of affordable insurance products. Digital technologies also allow efficient government policy designs, policy implementation, and environmental outcomes monitoring. These benefits are great, but digital agriculture also has risks, like a digital divide. Many people still can't access technology or sufficient internet and don't know how to use it. The second risk is data governance. Farmers' business and personal information can be exposed, tempting misuse. Lastly, there's the risk of limited competition. There are concerns that digital markets will increase market power and filter profits to a few digital technology providers. How do we ensure the agri-food system benefits from digital technology? First, governments need to increase access to digital and physical infrastructure for data and technology use throughout the food system. Second, policies need to support innovative ecosystems for digital agriculture through open data sets, digital platforms, digital entrepreneurship, digital payment systems, and digital skills. Equally critical is ensuring a competitive environment for digital services providers. We also need policies that protect data use and sharing against misuse. And make sure the agriculture policies maximize digital agriculture's potential for environmental sustainability. Through the digital transformation and with the right policies, the food system can deliver healthy people, a healthy planet, and healthy economies.
Well, many thanks. I mean, I think that video really does help, to bring this conversation, going, but also hopefully bring it together by the end of this session. I'd just like to sort of explain it. When I listen to that, I hear that word complex. I hear that word trying to build inclusive. I'm listening to environment, social, governance, economic. There's so many challenges. There was some work done by the World Business Council of Sustainable Development about 4 or 5 years ago. And in that work, it showed that out of the 500 million smallholder farmers that are out there really are the backbone of supporting national agriculture and feeding in a lot of products into the international markets. Only around 9% are fully integrated as to the point where they're selling to a structured market. And many of the companies were saying they did not know how to connect and they were looking for solutions. So I think that's a really important area to look at. So I'm just going to spend 2 minutes talking about a new program that the World Bank is working on in collaboration with our environmental practice. And so there's a very strong environmental theme about this program. It's called FOLAR. It's about food and land use restoration. We have worked with the GEF, the Global Environment Facility, to work on developing what we call a global platform, which is run by the World Bank on the section that I sit, as well as a series of child projects. This is a $304 million program, of which about 33 million is going into the global development program, and the rest of it is going to what we call child projects. Now, I wanted to stress this program because it's new, it's innovative, and it's focusing on 8 commodities, which are very, very strong linked to environmental challenges, whether it's deforestation, whether it's water, whether it's other issues. We're looking at palm, we're looking at coffee, rice, livestock, wheat, corn, soy, and cocoa. So I just want to stress that those are 8 real critical large products that come into the marketplace, large by value, large by volume. And we are working across the world with various partners, and those partners are the UNDP, Conservation International, FAO, IFAD, WWF, UNEP, and various other partners who are we're bringing together to look at really focusing on how we link that. So from the World Bank point of view, where I'm sitting, that global platform connected to child projects, I'm looking for that connection to be digital. I want to see how we can learn across products, how we can apply knowledge, and how we can really build to the consumer a much stronger product, which has got very, very good recognitions across standards. Environmental standards, which we're focusing on this project. We also do, I'm sure you're aware, a lot of work on the social side, the living wage, the fair wage, prosperous incomes, all of these sectors that are being built, the narratives around farmers. So on that note, I would like to introduce Ivan Harvey, the Global Head of Sustainability at NASDAQ. And I'm going to be a little bit brutal as the moderator. You know, we're trying to put a lot into this program. So I'm going to give you severe warnings if you go over time, and I don't want to embarrass you because I will not embarrass myself as I moderate, I can assure you. And let's make sure that we have audience participation. You know, that's the goal. So we're going to run this through. We've got dialogue presentations going on for the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes, then solidly with the audience. And we want to make sure we create that space. So I'm going to hand over you to Ivan. So please go ahead. You've got your 10 minutes. And hopefully you'll allow me a couple of minutes within that 10 to ask you a question or two.
I sure will. I presume you can hear me too. Happy Earth Day, everyone. I've got a squadron of lawn care people actually have descended next door. So if you hear background noise, I apologize. And I'm very glad that you played that video, which I found to be quite excellent, a good summary of the state of this issue. It's not my expertise, global food chains and food insecurity. It's a part of the work that I do for ESG and ESG reporting with corporates around the world and other stock exchanges, but it is not all of my work. So I'm going to take you all through a very quick 8-minute tour and saving 2 minutes for questions of where we are at this intersection as a stock exchange in this world of investors and ESG data and corporates. Some of this may be interesting background for some of you to the food debate, and some of this may be overkill, but you know, at least you'll be armed with a basic understanding of how ESG data in particular and sustainability as a decision-making criterion are playing out in the world that I work in. So as the head of sustainability for NASDAQ, it's internal and external. So it's everything we do as a public company ourselves to manage our environmental, social, and governance work, and everything we do externally as an advocate in the exchange space. So trying to find that common sense nexus between regulators and listed public companies and stock exchanges on disclosures of data for things like sustainability and ESG. But in addition, a lot of governance and board work and other things that are just required. You might think, why is the ESG world and the exchange world an intersection, and how long has it been so? I would say that it's been more than a decade of engagement from the stock exchange industry on ESG. There were some early adopters in Johannesburg in Brazil that were coming out of very specific economic and political issues. But now there is a overwhelming consensus in the stock exchange industry about engagement and education on ESG issues with listed companies. So there have been 2 working groups that actually have been driving that. One at the United Nations called the Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative, and another one in our trade association called the World Federation of Exchanges. But they're basically doing the same thing, trying to take the 105 or so exchanges that exist on planet Earth and drive them into a cohesive unit when it comes to working with listed public companies about the transmission of ESG data out to stakeholders that matter. Primarily investors, but not exclusively investors. And you can see this change in the numbers too. When I started in this, I've been at the exchange for almost 20 years, but when I started 10 years ago in this role, only 5 exchanges on Earth had written ESG disclosure guidance, and now that number is 58. It's been a tremendous change in the way that we do business. There are lots of ways for the exchange to engage with listed companies on ESG and sustainability. They can do listing rules, they can have qualifications, there could be formal written guidance. We do a lot of education, outreach, advocacy. We do a lot of hosted events such as this, roundtables. We also develop products and services that focus on sustainable capital formation. So we have index products and a bond network and a data portal, et cetera. And then last but not least, I'll call your attention to a statement of principles that the exchange industry put out 2 years ago, 5 principles that sort of summarizes our commitment to this issue. And virtually every exchange has signed this, that they will, 1, create more sustainability understanding around the world, normalize and mainstream the ESG data, which has been a lot of the work, actively engage with a broad stakeholder group, create sustainable and scalable products, and then manage their ESG processes in-house. So that's a quick overview of why the exchanges are engaged. And you probably already know, or have heard, because of the job that you have, about ESG and investors. It's gone over the last 40 years from sort of a niche or more activist position into a mainstream portfolio position. So from the 60s, when you had issues-based and religious prohibitions on sin stocks, to SRI, which is socially responsible investing, a movement in the investment arena away from investors that are specializing in a particular outcome or expected outcome to mainstream portfolio managers, the largest ones on earth, BlackRock and State Street and others, that have essentially said that ESG is an important part of their valuation when it comes to putting companies into baskets and creating products around different rankings and ratings of companies. The holdup, I mean, there's been that movement, and just about every investor will tell you that they integrate ESG data into their decision making. The holdup has been the data has been not great, and I'm going to turn to the state of the data for the food sector at the end of this presentation. And then just to mention the driver in that space, like I mentioned, the driver for exchanges was a UN group. There's a UN-backed group that's sort of the driver for the investor too, which is the UNPRI, the Principles for Responsible Investment. 63 signatories when it launched a decade ago, and now over 3,000. Just about every large asset manager and asset owner on earth is a signatory. NASDAQ itself is a signatory as a service provider, and it essentially commits you to creating more understanding and driving more sustainable investment. Corporations. Why does ESG matter to corporates? Besides the fact that investors are knocking on the door and asking for more information. We've gone from an era 10 years ago where staying silent was absolutely an option on ESG. You did not have to necessarily disclose anything, especially in this country. There was a lack of regulatory engagement. I think we're seeing that change a little bit now. Now ESG disclosure is increasingly a sort of table stakes for investors and for RFPs, and certainly for government contracting and a lot of other things where the business affects the value chain of the company, or the potential value chain of the company. There have been lots of conflicting perspectives, depending on who you talk to, about the business case for ESG. Some people feel like it is a risk management exercise. Some people feel like it is an innovation and opportunity exercise. The market opportunity has certainly grown for companies that lean in on this topic, that develop green and clean products, that have technologies that address these issues around the world. But it has been a difficult lift for companies for a couple of reasons. One is they didn't start as experts in sustainability or in ESG. They did not necessarily have the in-house talent to report on the data that was being asked of them. And we've seen a steady drumbeat of growth in reporting on a voluntary basis, especially in the US. The S&P 500, for example, there was 20% reporting on ESG in 2011. Now it's 90% reporting. So at the large company end of the spectrum, there's been a steady increase of voluntary ESG reporting. But a lot of the small and medium companies have been left out. If they're not in a supply chain, or if they haven't been squeezed by an investor or a parent company or a downstream client, then they are likely being left out of potential business, and that's becoming a problem. And then I've just touched on the three major stakeholders because that's where exchanges sit, in between the three of those. But there are many, many others when it comes to the capital markets and sustainability. I mean, there are a host of regulators. There's been a lot of regulatory emphasis on this issue from around the world. The US is sort of the last to the table when it comes to ESG reporting and certainly climate reporting. There's the growing influence, and I would say disproportionate influence, of rankers and raters. There are ESG ratings firms that look outside, that look at publicly disclosed data from companies and give them a score on their overall sustainability or greenness or ESG prowess. Those rankings are often imperfect, often based on sketchy data, often wildly inconsistent methodologies between different channels. That's a frustration point. There's lots of financial tech and financial services companies that are in on ESG because there's this influx of data that's pouring into the system, and everybody's trying to turn that into a product and turn that into insight. There have been all these reporting frameworks that have jumped up over around the world, starting probably most notably with the GRI, which has been around for 20 years. But now you have SASB and TCFD and CDP and IIRC. There's a variety of different acronyms, and you probably know most of them. But they're all essentially doing versions of the same thing, trying to find a way and a methodology to help companies and corporates disclose key sustainability metrics to audiences that matter, primarily investors, but not exclusively. So that's the necessary preamble to what I wanted to talk about, and maybe what your questions might address, which would be ESG and food. There's no doubt that food is at the nexus of just about every sustainability issue you can name. I mean, it fits into how we deal with health, how we deal with hunger. There's an increasing emphasis on the food issue as a climate issue, as a land use issue. When we start to measure natural capital, food always comes up as a concern. Food should be an obvious target for ESG-minded investors. I mean, ESG-minded investors are everybody now, but it should be an obvious target. But you know, the data has been hard to come by in this sector more than others, and I think the video sort of makes some of these points for me. And then the analysis of global food chains has been difficult for some investors to undertake. So it has been left a little bit behind in terms of pet sectors and focusing on ESG as a positive. There have been some really notable companies that have come to market that are focused on in the food sector. I mean, beyond and impossible to name just a couple, but there have been a lot of innovations and entrepreneurship that focus on food tech and agri-tech to sort of find innovation there. And I think the video is also speaking to that cutting edge. I don't have to tell you about the increased and ever-present consumer demand for more transparency on consumables and for the health of the planet, both physically and climate-wise. I work with a lot of human rights standard setters, and they're trying to figure out how food insecurity fits into human rights. Food insecurity is often treated as a human rights issue, or the lack thereof. You probably know the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I would argue that food and the food supply chain fits into 2 or 3 of them at the very least, in addition to poverty and hunger. And then I'll just leave you with this, and I don't mean to be pessimistic. You might have seen this Wall Street Journal survey from earlier this year. They basically looked at 5,500 publicly traded companies on ESG metrics, trying to come up with a somewhat objective ranking of how well they are doing in terms of their performance on ESG issues. And there was only one food company in the top 100, and that was Nestle. And there's been a lot of quibbles with the survey and a lot of questions about the methodology, but it's notable that only one food company was cited in the top 100, despite the fact that the food industry generally is responsible for like a quarter of the world's greenhouse gas emissions and I think 3/4 of all of its freshwater withdrawal. So, you know, it has a very high environmental, at least, impact on the world. And yet, in terms of corporate performance and the pieces of the economic system that are actually meant to address issues that are important to investors like sustainability, there seems to be a disconnect, at least so far, between the largest brands and those actual impacts. So I'll leave it there and give you some time for some questions. Hopefully that was useful, but I wanted to sort of leave, you know, more time for conversation rather than presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Ivan. I mean, you give us a little ray of hope, but there's a lot of also concern in what you said there. I mean, we're very much following the numbers that you're talking about, you know, the impact on the environment of the food sector, you know, the impact on water, particularly the greenhouse gas emissions. You know, there's some real awkward products, you know, related to rice and so on and so forth that we're doing a lot of work on. This is part of a lot of our work to, you know, related to the climate smart agenda and so on. I want to ask you, I'm not sure if it's a question that we ask a lot ourselves. What's easier to measure? Environmental impacts or social impacts of companies?
I would argue, and I think most people would agree, that environmental impact is easier to measure. There are more robust standards that have been matured over time. There's more of a consensus around which metrics actually bear insight. There's still an evolving discussion about the social metrics that actually, when you talk about valuation, when you talk about company performance, there's a lot of diverse opinion about the social metrics. There's agreement that we need to measure social better. Social has been left out of the calculation conversation for a long time because it's so difficult. But because there's so many variables, so many externalities, and social in particular, and it is, you could argue, a less scientific measurement of some aspects of performance, I think that there's no doubt that the social is harder to measure.
No, thank you. I mean, the kind of feedback we're getting is, you know, particularly related to this FOLO program, when we look at the environmental side, there's a lot, as you say, being done, but it is still hard to sort of really ensure the data is robust as well. You know, it's challenging. So you know, from what you said, there's really encouraging. Do you find that you know, the companies that you talk to, are they concerned about costs of data collection? Is that a big cost to them?
It is a big cost. It is a big risk. The cost of merely reporting on the very basic sustainability frameworks is prohibitive for small and medium companies. So there's a lot of concern about data gathering and data transparency. And I would argue in our engagement with our companies, we have 3,000 of them of all sizes. Our engagement is always about use this data internally first, use it as a performance measurement tool in-house, and then worry about the public disclosure later, because often the barrier is not necessarily that they don't have the data, but that they're concerned about the quality or how it benchmarks against peers and competitors. So, you know, the first step to me is always marshal the data, figure out where the performance is in-house, use it as a tool to manage your business, and then worry about how you transmit that outside of the business. But there's no doubt that data collection, reporting, this new discipline of ESG as a separate and somewhat related reporting topic in terms of the financials is a real struggle.
I mean, thank you. I mean, you really are sort of framing the conversation. I mean, we're going to pause there with you, Ivan. We're going to come back to you. Don't run away. I mean, I want to see you there because I've got some burning questions, but I can't just keep the dialogue with yourself. I'm going to ask Natalia Olsen to appear. I'm sure you're connected. I can't see your picture yet, or otherwise you can shout out to me. I know you're connected. I'd like you to take over this session that we talked about because I'm really, really excited to hear what's going on, you know, in this innovation space between Ukko and Vuitton. So Natalia, I can see you now. Sorry, I couldn't see you earlier. I can see you smiling. So please introduce yourself. Introduce these two innovators that have come, because I want to know whether, you know, Ivan thinks that these innovators are really onto something. You know, let's really look at what's going to be put forward. So over to you. Thank you very much. Muted, the famous expression for the last year, you're muted. Are you struggling to unmute?
I am now. Perfect. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much, you know, Chris, for hosting us, and even for gracing us with a great overview of everything that you're doing. And I just wanted to let people know out there that you know, all companies start small, right? All the companies that are listed on NASDAQ all across the different stock exchanges across the world, all either started on a kitchen table, or in a dorm room, or a barn, or a carpet warehouse, which is where, you know, Google had the space before they started. And my friend Saeed, who started Plug and Play, really hosted them and helped them get going. So we all start small, and here the idea is to give an opportunity to those companies to be able to showcase, to be able to see how they're part of that supply chain, that part of that chain of innovation. So, you know, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I just arrived to Palo Alto about 7-8 hours ago from Spain, and so I'm still trying to wake up. But I've been on the Paris Agreement team. You know, I've been talking about green jobs for 20 years when they thought that, you know, I just wanted to hug trees and sing Kumbaya. But today is a different perspective, and the ESGs really create that framework, I think, for corporations and businesses to get going. So we're going to start with Ketan Kaushish, who is the CEO of Yuko. Yuko is a predictive analytics startup that provides prescriptions to farmers and when and where to proactively apply crop inputs to help them grow in a more sustainable and profitable way. You'd be surprised how amazing those topics, right? Predictive analysis, transparency, traceability were subjects that we weren't talking about not even 10 years ago. So it's exciting. You know, like Ivan said, we need good data, and that data in the food agri industry is key. So go ahead, Ketan, take it away.
Well, hello everyone. You know, thanks for this opportunity to be a part of this webinar. And you know, I'll just take off from where Evan left it, where you know, Evan said that there's not a lot of data coming in from a ESG standpoint from food, and you know, we work more upstream with the farmer. So you know, I'll kick it off saying any data that is generated on the farm level, right? So we need to understand what these farmers are doing. We need to track what these farmers are doing, quantify it. in certain cases anonymize it, because a farmer may not want to exactly tell you what pesticides are they applying, how much are they applying. So anonymize it, and that's the kind of data that some of the food and the supermarkets can use. But I think it all goes back, when you think about upstream, it all goes back to what is the incentive for the farmer to be more environmental, right? Is that, and when you think from a farmer standpoint, whether that's a subsistence farmer or whether that's a farming operation in North America farming 20, 30,000 acres, it all goes back to how can I make more money on a per acre basis? How can I have a higher yield? And that's where our focus is. So when it comes to when it comes to applying crop inputs, which is a key element in growing crops, how can we help? How can we help farmers be more proactive? How can we use predictive analytics to do that? If you look at ag, anyone who's close to ag or reads about ag, we know that over the past 10 years, there has been an advent of big data in ag. So, you have drones flying, you have UAVs, you have imaging from satellites, you have, sensors going in the field, IoT coming in, something that we didn't expect, when we think about early 2000s or even in the 90s. But all that is happening. Now, what that's resulting in is a lot of digitizing the farm, so data that was missing from the farm. But still from a farmer standpoint, farmer is not a programmer. Farmer is not someone who's grown up analyzing data and working with a lot of data. So farmer needs help to understand what that data means for them. So what we're seeing is, even with all that big data coming in, a farmer is still not able to make decisions in time that would result in what we call as contributing towards the ESG metrics, such as how can they reduce the reliance on pesticide fertilizers, water, optimize labor, mitigate the impact of climate change and crop protection. And the thing is, if you look at a farmer, if you tell a farmer that we'll give you the perfect condition and you don't need to apply any fertilizer, water, or pesticides, the farmer will be very happy with it, because all these are cost to growing crops. So, a farmer themselves want to reduce these crop inputs. They just need tools that can help them do that while getting higher yield. And that's what we're trying to do. So what we're trying, this is show, this slide just shows you an overview of how it's not just impacting the farmer, but some of the other big companies as well. If you look at the pesticide, seed, fertilizer, ag input retailers, they all want farmers to be more sustainable. I go back to what Evan was saying. They all want to rank higher on the ESG metrics, and hence they're working towards this. So it's not the farmer working in isolation, but it's the whole industry coming together. So and talking a bit more about Huco. So what we are doing is, like Natalia mentioned in the introduction, we're providing predictive analytics so that farmers can proactively take decisions on when to apply crop inputs, and that results in two things. So number one is hitting the nail on the head so that farmers are more profitable, and B, it's also more environmentally sustainable. And I'll just take 30 seconds to give you an overview on how Huco works, how we work. So another big topic in AgTech these days is data duplicity. Farmers having to use 50 different platforms to figure out what they need to do. So Huco actually fits very well within the existing ecosystem. So we can integrate with existing devices that go on the farm, aggregate data, analyze it, and give an advisory on when should farm apply crop inputs. And an advisory could be as simple as, hey, Mr. Farmer, hey, John, field 45, you need to go spray your pesticide 3 days from now. Field 46, don't spray pesticide. Field 47, you don't need to irrigate because you're going to get rainfall 3 days from now. Should be good enough for your crop. So it's a very, very targeted, single, every output has a single action defined for the farmer that they can proactively work on. And then, the way we built this is farmers can also access these advisories through any platform that they're using. These are just some of the metrics we've been able to achieve. 20% reduction in pesticide usage with the farmers who've worked with us so far. And that also is translating to high ROI for the farmers. Like I said, if a farmer is given a choice not to spray pesticides, they won't, but they spray it so that they can grow better crops. So, with the reduction in pesticide, it does help in improving ROI. And I'll just close off with this slide. For us, really, we see the power of predictive analytics going all the way from we talk about crop input, but regenerative ag, which is a big topic, right? One of the big things that will come into picture in the next couple of years is quantifying the amount of carbon being sequestered in the soil, so that can be applied, that can be converted into carbon credits that these food companies, supermarkets can trade in the carbon markets, right? So we see the power of predictive analytics coming in even helping farmers quantify how much carbon they're sequestering and what is the impact of doing that to their crop, to their profitability. So I'll take a pause here. Thank you again for the opportunity and open to any questions anyone may have.
Natalia, I was going to recommend we go
Great.
straight.
Yes.
If we go straight to the next speaker. Thank you so much, Ketan. Thank you. It's brilliant. Thank you.
Let me introduce Luis Carbajo, CEO of Votum. Votum is a blockchain startup with the ability to track food, feed, or any substance that will be used for consumption through all stages of production, processing, and distribution. Developing blockchain applications, which I know for a lot of folks is tough to understand, but Votum, what it does is actually make it easier for people to not have to need to know much more about the underlying tech. But like I said, blockchain is a great way for us to start tracking and get better data. So Luis, take it away.
You're still muted, Lewis. Yeah, there you're unmuted. Go ahead.
It's okay? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present my company. So as you were mentioning on the presentation, there are different challenges that the food industry face, right? There is food fraud, fragmented supply chain, bad practices by different suppliers, contamination, and a bunch of different problems that we face as consumers, as society, because it's not easy sometimes to see what's going on the field and go to the supermarkets, right? But it's a clear consensus that better data, better information will pave a better way to solve these issues. And this is basically the solution that we are providing: track and trace information on the supply chain into the blockchain to provide trust and transparency to the whole ecosystem. Blockchain is a complex technology, a lot of in the media for cryptocurrencies, a lot of things. But what you need to know is that it's an underlying technology that allows to keep data in a secure and safe environment, and can be used also by different means or by different players in a particular ecosystem. Basically, the promise in the supply chain for the food industry is that we can keep records for everything that is happening across the entire supply chain, even if the different players use different information systems. So from the farmer that doesn't have access to a computer but has access to a phone in which they have some kind of connections, to all the way to the more complex or bigger supermarket in the planet that has a complex ERP system. From every step, you can put data into the blockchain, and based on access and permissions, you can after share the information that is worthy between these players. And this is basically what we are doing from Votum. So with farmers and fisheries, we are providing this layer of technology that allows to have data with transparency, authenticate who is putting the data. It's immutable, everything that is put in there. We allow multi-party validation for the information that is put into the system. We also capture information directly from sensors on Industry 4.0, and we allow this interoperability into systems that is pretty important. We already are doing this with different fruit producers, mainly in Spain. We have small producers like Osmond Soliud, that is a small farmer, from also to big food groups like could be Grupo Bimbo or Borges, that is a huge manufacturers of olive oil in Spain, or Calconut that has nuts and fruit and other kind of fruits, to also Caradero Profunda fisheries. We are a young company founded in 2008. We built this platform to track and trace data for the food system. We have already been invested by Draper, that is one of the main Silicon Valley venture capitals. We have patents and we have different recognitions. The latest one, we were already listed by Gartner in 2020 for one of our developments. What we have done, as Natalia was saying, is to do very easy for our customers, from SMEs to big companies, to put data across all the supply chain into the blockchain. And we are allowed to do that also in private and public blockchains, because there are different kinds of blockchains that can be used for this. As specific examples of how our customers are using our technology, we have Cosmo Soliu, that is a small farmer in Spain that produce ecologic eggs. They basically what they want to do is to show to their customers how fresh their eggs are, and that basically what they are picking up into their farms at 6 in the morning are in the supermarket by noon. And that is how they are using basically our platform, just for that simple purpose, and also to fight fraud, because what they are telling us is that you know, they're in their productions, when the summer starts and the heat goes up, they just get less eggs, so they need to reduce their output because it's just natural. They are ecological farms, right? But they know that some other suppliers, they don't. So they know that there is some fraud into the systems, and what you are buying as ecological eggs, they are actually not ecological eggs, and that is just bad for the consumer, bad for everyone. And on the other side, we have Caladero, is a wholesaler of fish for one of the main supermarkets in Spain that is called Mercadona. Their interest is more about supplier control. They are very strict in sustainability policies for fisheries, and maybe you don't know, but fish is one of these products that are there is a lot of fraud into the supply chain. When they tell you that you are buying tuna, it's actually the tuna is not coming from the region that they are telling you that you are buying. So they want to control better their supply chain to assure their customers, and in this case the supermarket Mercadona, from where the fish is coming, and if they are respecting all the sustainability practice that they want to support. As I was mentioning, our platform is fully used by different kind of food companies. They are using that to fight fraud, to show their best practices, and support that as a marketing effort for their consumers, improve efficiency, basically reducing the claims that they have between different players into the system. There is a lot of money that is wasted on the administrative processes of claimings and the waste that produce, and also obviously engage with consumers. And to say, you will read this QR code, you will see what a consumer will see in their mobile phone when they are using our platform. And I think that's mainly is our technology has been recognized by several awards. The last one was recognized by the King of Spain and the President of Spain. And as I mentioned before, we were recognized also by some of the leaders in the technology business, like Gartner, in their latest 2020 report. That's it. That's our team, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Okay, well, firstly, my sincere thanks to Luis and to Ketan for really, really intriguing presentations, and I really do commend you for the space that you're building within your businesses. It's so hard to start up businesses and back them and scale them. So what we'll do, I'll ask a couple of questions. There's some things coming through on the chat, and then we're going to go to Rodrigo Esteban of Bimbo and Katarina Martins of Maui to ask them some of their views and opinions. And I did notice straight away, I saw Grupo Bimbo on Luis's slide. So I'm not sure if we're allowed to sort of delve into that, unless that's going to get into any form of competitive space or whatever, but we'll worry about that in a moment. So basically, I just wanted to understand from Ketan, what's your scope of operation? You're working with farmers. Give us the flavor and scale. I couldn't take from your presentation. Are you focused in one geography or further geographies? So over to you, Ketan.
Absolutely. So for us, we work with farmers definitely. We also work with some of the ag enterprises, ag businesses, the pesticide companies, the retailers, food companies. And the common thread that combines why all these enterprises are working with us. I did speak about why farmers are interested, but all these enterprise companies are working with us, from a sustainability mandate, making sure that they are providing tools to their farmers who supply to them so that they can grow more sustainable crop. And for us, Chris, the good thing with algorithms and predictive modeling is, you can train them, you can custom fit them for different geographies. So we just a 3-year-old company. We started off working in Canada, but today we work in Canada, US. We've just trained our models for Argentina, Brazil. We've done some work in Sweden, and now we are in talks to start work in India and China. So that's the advantage of a pure software company. You can scale very fast if you find the right partners. You can identify the right problem in different geographies.
So can we bring you into Africa?
Absolutely. I mean, Chris, for us to enter any market outside of North America, we need local partners. And that's because the supply chain, the way you work in those geographies are different. So if we have the right partner, we can absolutely enter Africa. And what I can tell you is the impact of what we're doing is the most in developing and underdeveloped countries, because that's where the yield gap is the most. So the more we can benefit, the better it is.
No, I really appreciate what you're saying. I think this is really, really critical. I mean, to Lewis, I mean, blockchain is talked about a lot. I mean, a lot of people really, really consider this to be the silver bullet, in a lot of these linkages. So I'm going to ask you, Lewis, I mean, how far has that bullet flown? Has it hit the target, or are you a little bit off still?
Well, actually, I think that we are still at an earlier stage, but definitely is the way to go. It becomes more obvious as we are working with more and more customers, is that if we are able to implement what it's called now, like truth checks into the supply chain that are independent certifiers, that normally came through sensors and through probably sensors, we will be able to really track and trace the complete supply chain and trust all the data that we are putting into the blockchain. Right now, there is a say in the industry, they say you garbage in, garbage out. So if there is bad data, you are going to get bad data. So for that reason, it's important to put these truth checks across the supply chain to energy measures, right? To be able to read that is okay what is put in there. And we are already doing that in some specific customers with some specific solutions. And as we will be moving along the way with IoT, I think that it's going to be commonplace to implement these kind of solutions to really trust the information.
Let me ask you one question there, Lewis. I mean, what is the role of banks in blockchain? I mean, we know you're connecting between your producer and customers. What is the role of banks? How can we get more finance into this sector? That's where we really are struggling.
Well, it's because we are just as the first layer, but when you trust the data that you are putting into the blockchain and all the parties start seeing this as the trusted data, you can build a bunch of services on top of that. Financing is one of them. Insurance is a second layer. So that kind of the second step of what we are seeing. For example, we have an example of reducing claims for one of the producers and the farmer, where they see an immediate impact on what they are doing, thanks to the data that they are able to provide to their customers being the supermarkets. So if you have better data, you will be able to provide better information to get loans, to get access to different financial products. So we just started, but definitely the better data is what I believe it's going to be.
No, this is really important because we're looking at this sector all the time on the obviously as development finance, commercial finance, bringing more and leveraging more finance in around the robust systems. So I mean back to Ketan, and then we're going to open it up. Natalia, I think, might come in with a question too, or we'll go into the next segment. But to Ketan, you talked about incentives for change with farmers. What do you mean? I mean, I've got pretty strong views on this, and I'll bring it out later in the conversation. I'm not going to target you on this, but what do you mean on incentive?
So, when I say incentive, it can be two kinds of incentive, right? So one is an internal incentive to a farmer saying, hey, even if I reduce my fertilizer usage, but I'm applying it at a specific time, am I seeing an impact in the yield? Am I making am I making my field, my farm more profitable, right? So that can be one kind of incentive, which is more of an internal to the farm. And then there's an external incentive, Chris, which is, if a food company comes and tells me that spray, you should be reducing your spray, what's the incentive? If I'm able to do that, and if I can quantify it and show it to, to this food company, are they going to pay me a higher price? Because they may definitely go sell it at a higher price in the supermarket, but what is the residual value that is flowing to the farmer? In a very, very similar concept is what we're also talking about now, carbon credits and carbon sequestration, right? So if a farmer is making the effort to sequester carbon, if they are rotating with cover crops over 2 or 3 years, and they're not growing corn and soybean, let's take Midwest US, how will the farmer be compensated for the carbon credits that they're generating that someone else can buy from them and trade?
I'm going to come back to that conversation a bit later on in the interest of time, because it's so important. Natalia, do you have any comments now, or should we move into the other segment? You're muted, I think. I can't hear you. Sorry. Can I hear you? I don't see you're muted, but I can't hear you.
Absolutely.
No, you're there.
So, yes. I just wanted to ask, coming back to Ivan, what did you think? I mean, even one of the questions was garbage in, garbage out. So we've come a long way with technology on cleaning the data, right? And figuring out how we can be more transparent. I think that's very valid in what we see today.
We've come a long way, but there's a long way to go. I think that there's more data in the system. I think that is largely unstructured and unverified. One of the problems with ESG reporting at the corporate level generally is that there's no audit step. There's very little assurance of the data, so the companies are sort of free to self-report. And I think that most companies are probably doing it genuinely and trying to come up with good data points. Some of them are obviously twisting it to other purposes. I mean, that's just inevitable when you have a voluntary reporting mechanism. So I still think we're in the middle of sort of a bad data era. We're in the middle of trying to sort out which data, the signal from the noise, and to try to, there's so much request for information, so many different stakeholders, so many different channels, to try to figure out which ones are really meaningful in terms of performance and valuation, and which ones are just, perhaps interesting and maybe really interesting to a specialist in the field, but not necessarily especially essential for estimating the valuation of a company.
Very, very, very good points. And this is where we want to, these are startups, right? And this is where we want to, like we said before, all these startups start small and then they become the amazing companies around the world. And with that, I just wanted to, move to our discussion with Moe. Katarina is the Chief Sustainability Officer and of the largest, I think, one of the world's largest fisheries. I know that they're the biggest in the world in salmon, and it's just exciting for her to be here today and start with this discussion. Chris, tell me, in the Valley we have this way of just talking and brainstorming and not being too formal and stuff. But
well, I'm trying to be not formal. They talk about a fireside chat, but I haven't got the fire on. It's too warm. So, but let's see if we can warm it up a bit. I mean, we've really set a very good stage here. Ivan's, overarching words and the direction and the need. There is a need for, ESG data, and to hear from Lewis and from Ketan on their work, I find is really exciting. So, Katerina, you're in a business which is mature. You're in the marketplace. You're consumer facing. What's going on in your space? What's happening? Are you progressing? The big question is, do you trust the data that you're given by your suppliers or what you're giving on to consumers? So over to you, Katerina. You're amongst friends, Don't worry, we're only recording.
Thank you very much, Chris and Natalia, for the invitation. Maybe I can just briefly present Maui so that everyone knows who we are. So indeed, we are one of the world's largest seafood companies, and in fact, on salmon, the largest. We produce close to 2.5 billion meals every year. We have a global presence in more than 70 countries, and we are a fully integrated value chain. So meaning from feed production to our own breeding and genetics and freshwater, seawater, and then also on the downstream side of the operations with processing plants around the world, and also having a global brand present in several markets. So we are listed on the Oslo Stock Exchange, and the headquarters is where I'm sitting today, Bergen in Norway. So it's a beautiful, really, discussion what we are having. And as you say, Chris, it has been, quite a journey for us over the last years. We have been reporting on ESG for, more than 10 years. Even all the abbreviations you talked about, the CDP reporting, the TCFD, the, global reporting initiative, that is all very familiar elements for us. I think one of the aspects we have changed a couple of years ago, which we found really necessary, was the auditing of the sustainability data. So we have really observed that from a, we had to move in that direction. The financial numbers, they are obviously very mature, but we also realized with increased attention from our investors and, banks and our financial institutions, it becomes really important that we internally in the organization trust our numbers, but that also externally there is also that level of trust. So we have embarked on those auditing aspects as well, which I really recommend, and I think it's really valuable. So I believe our data is much better now as it was a few years ago, but there is still a need of really standardization. And if I can bring a challenge here, I think the challenge is that there are so many, ESG benchmarks out there that for us, corporations, it becomes quite challenging to know where do you have to direct yourself, because these methodologies are very different. So it's still a challenge out there to really compare these metrics, I would say.
I was just going to ask that, when you talk about the business, I mean, it's obviously very, very large, it's very global. I want to get a sense from you that as you've gone forward and you've improved and you've really added data into ESG, has your investor profile changed? You got a different kind of investor in the business because of this, rather than just the financial reporting. As you report, what's happened on your investor portfolio?
No, I do believe that there is an increased focus and attention from, green investment into our business, and the proof of that was that we have launched in the beginning of 2020, last year, our first green bond, which was a huge success. And we do have the target to, achieve a green financing, 80% of green financing by 2022, and eventually 100% green financing by 2026. So, and that is really a reflection of that interest from the capital markets on a strong ESG, let's say, portfolio.
But as you move into green finance, what does that mean to the company? Are you reducing your costs of borrowing, or is it just for a consumer-facing market?
I think it's really on both ends. It's to leverage the work that you are already doing, but from a financial perspective, it's also beneficial. So, and it really helps, I think, being transparent and more clear of how these assets are being used in the company in terms of investments moving forward, in different areas of our business, that they are clearly bring a value either from a freshwater use reduction or from a greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So it does provide a value internally to the company, definitely.
So, but you're a fully integrated business. But I was just trying to understand. I looked at your website, in advance. Do you buy products? Do you buy fish products from other or producers and bring it into your supply chain, or is your supply chain entirely from your own production base?
No, we do buy products also from other suppliers, but the majority is definitely our own internal production of salmon. So that makes the biggest chunk of it. Yeah.
So in terms of what Lewis was proposing on blockchain, I mean, do you, as a company, is blockchain relevant, important? Are you looking at it?
It is absolutely, Chris. And for that sake, if we think about, for example, Maui as a brand, which we have launched this global brand, in several countries now, we have in our customer-facing products, QR codes, which really show, the link along the value chain of all the steps there. And, some of our, retailers, they're really, keen on following, the blockchain approach as well. And we are following as well, global standards when it comes to seafood traceability, etc. So these elements of key data elements and key transactions along the value chain is something we are paying very much attention to.
But as a company, do you outsource any of this data collection, have service providers, or are you doing it all in-house?
Well, there's so much data out there, environmental data with sensors in the water. Of course, then we are using some companies who do that. Then we have, we are working quite intensively with the concept that we call, smart farming, which we want to reach 100% smart farming, very much aligned with presentation we saw from UCO, but kind of translating that into the aquaculture world, which is quite exciting to really capture this big data collection that we have out there, but also with, sensors and, cameras underwater that will allow us to understand how the fish behave. And if it's the right moment to feed our fish and try to understand its behavior, etc. So this is really becoming a reality also in definitely in salmon farming, which I strongly believe will give us so many benefits in different areas.
Well, obviously, as a group that we're talking to, I'm looking for connections. I mean, you're aquaculture, but you're also related to agriculture because of your feed. Where does that come from? Is that all local? I mean, are you looking at the footprint of that feed that comes into your mills, the raw materials?
Absolutely, Chris. So sourcing feed raw materials is a key component of our sustainability strategy. So, and that includes both, as you rightly said, the connection with, vegetable oils and different types of proteins coming from land, and also marine raw materials. So it becomes quite important for us from, a sustainability strategy and from a carbon footprint perspective to really work with our suppliers globally and also locally when we can source locally to really move, and reduce the carbon footprint of our salmon, which in the end will be related a lot with the carbon footprint of our feed.
No, thank you. I mean, that's a really great introduction. I'm looking at questions from the audience. I mean, a couple of things about, with your data. How do you get third-party certification of your own data? What you publish. What's your reference point for, certification of that data?
Well, certification of our data, we use obviously, third independent audits that go through our data. We focus, I saw the comments earlier from from a previous speaker about the importance of focus, and that's what we have done. We have run a materiality assessment for several years, so we have, picked the most material elements both internally, but also for our stakeholders, and then we take it from there. We have set, specific targets and commitments, which we have published in our sustainability strategy, which is called Leading the Blue Revolution Plan, and we really try to be transparent on our progress towards those targets. Not sure if I answered your question, Chris.
No, you give me some good feedback. I'm asking, I've got to be careful because on the World Bank side, I'm leading a new development area in aqua business, as we're calling it. So I've got to be careful, otherwise I'll be just using you to get more and more information for my own needs. So I've got to show you around. So I'm going to go back to Ketan, and I want to ask him a couple of questions here. I want to, we're past the hour now. I mean, there's some questions coming through, and I want to sort of throw to you, Ketan, at the World Bank, what we're excited at is this whole issue about, incentivizing farmers for their environmental management. I'm going to throw two things at you, and I'd like you to give me some feedback, whether we're on the right track. We're looking at, what is the farmer of the future? The farmer of the future should have income from his product, obviously, but income from his environmental management. Now, you're stressing that your data is there, on the environmental side to really show that farmers are reducing their carbon footprint. So the thoughts in the mind, you talk about monetizing, that gap, that improvement. So the question to you is that, we're looking at agroforestry models, so above ground carbon, that's number one. But in your area of work, I mean, we're challenged on where we're trying to look at how do you improve or improve carbon in soils to bring soils below ground carbon into the market so that farmers of the future, have this dual income. We see it in the US, we see it in Europe, but we're not seeing it in Africa. We're not seeing opportunities in emerging economies. What can you do to help us with a methodology there?
That's a great question, Chris. That's a very loaded question.
I know.
And
you got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll probably speak as I think, but I'll start off with what is the difference between how farmers farm, the difference between industrialized farming versus what we see in Africa, right? So when you look at industrialized farming, and even when you think about carbon, you have to do a few things right before you even think about carbon, right? So for example, if you look at North America, or if you look at Europe, yields are very high. Farmers are very, farmers have applied fungicides, insecticides, herbicides, nutrients. They've done till or no till over a number of years. So what you've seen is that farmers are basically getting 70 to 80% of the potential yields that they can get. And hence they're saying, okay, what is the next frontier that we can do? What is the next thing that we can do? And and from that standpoint, when you think about carbon, that's in my mind, it's probably the last frontier. You have to do all the other things right before you think about going to carbon. At the same time, if you look at Africa, I mean, even when you think about applying insecticides, only a small percentage of the farmers in Africa are applying insecticides. They're not applying micronutrients today. So when you think about them moving towards the carbon space, I would say that we have, in my mind, the first step is how can we help them get to that 70 to 80% potential in terms of how much crop can they produce from the land that they have, and as we're thinking about that, then, plug in carbon. So in the US, it was a lot of retrospective saying, I'm going to do my corn, soybean, corn, soybean, corn, soybean. And then someone said, hey, give it a minute, hold a minute, look what you're doing to the soil. Maybe you should think about your, a cover crop or something else to make sure that you maintain the sanctity of your soil.
So just wanted to ask you, so in the back end of your system, because this data is coming through, it's being analyzed, are you building that option for showing or displaying, demonstrating a reduction in carbon? Are you building that?
Not today, Chris. We are moving towards that. Like I said, carbon is the last frontier, so we need to have we need to understand crop physiognomy and agronomics in very, very detail to do that. We are moving towards it. We're not there yet. Today, what we could do is we could tell farmers, should they be applying pesticides or not, or how much. So we answer if, when, and where for pesticides, water, and nutrients. That's what we're doing today. But carbon is the next frontier.
Okay, no, thank you very much. I mean, it's really, really important work, and we really appreciate the way you're investing in all of this data and information. I wanted to ask Lewis, when we've been looking at blockchain, are you seeing now an increasing demand from these very large-scale public companies on blockchain? And when you look at blockchain, and you show the blockchain model, it is a linkage, it's a traceability. I want to ask you very direct, where is the first point of the traceability? Where does that start? Because we're often thinking about complexity of value chains. We're thinking about how these markets, how these products come forward. Just wanted to ask you there, where is the first point of blockchain?
Well, actually, we are tracking the information from the beginning. So the farmer or the fisher could be the first point of data that we track into the blockchain. Obviously, it comes down to what device this farmer can have to put the data into the blockchain. And the way that we are solving that is just with the smartphones. So if they have just a small connection, and even in Africa, they have that to or issue text messages, that is the interface that we are providing the farmers to provide the data on that first point of the supply chain and the data that we are capturing. So we believe that the technology is at a point of maturity in which it becomes down to if the farmer has the device, and the smartphone is probably the easiest way to go. If they have that smartphone, they can put the data into the blockchain and start the supply chain capture of data. Because after, in the next steps, normally the things are much easier, and people are starting getting access to computers or connections.
Which value chains are most important to you at the moment in your business on blockchain? Which are the supply chains that you're actually focusing on?
So what we are finding, because probably we are at such an early stage, is that the most or the customers that we are getting more on and asking for these kind of solutions are the ones that are really doing good practices and want to showcase their best practices to their customers. And obviously, for a marketing point of view, is where they are more focusing on. But we are also getting or providing proposals, for example, for the Catalonian government here in Spain, because they want to promote also local farmers and to promote the consumption of local food. So these are also the kind of people that are requesting the use of our technology to promote these kind of things.
No, thank you. I mean, it's very, very important work. But do you see a role of your blockchain getting into the cocoa supply chain, getting into the coffee supply chain, you know, in the emerging countries? I mean, you know, just as a short answer there, do you think it's applicable?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are already working in Chile, Colombia, and we believe that, once again, if the farmers can have access to a smartphone, you can implement this technology and start from there. So absolutely.
I just wanted to find out, is Evan still connected to us, or has he dropped off? Is Evan, are you there? Oh, I think Evan's left us. Is that correct?
He had to leave at 11, Chris. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I hadn't realized. So
another Earth Day. It's Earth Day.
yeah, no. I'm sure there's a lot to do, you know, in the respect of Earth Day for us. Natalia, do you have any questions for the panelists as well?
Well, you know, more than anything is how do we get a lot of these new innovations, right, into institutions like the World Bank? What the World Bank could do to go ahead and be able to give that information to the different countries, right? So there's a circular economy as far as information is concerned here in certain ways, because you know, unfortunately Bimbo couldn't get on right now because of an emergency, but the IFC was able to give funding to Bimbo when it was you know, 15 years ago, for them to grow and be able to have better infrastructure for the farmers in Mexico and across Latin. And so you would never think that that the IFC was looking out for these type of companies, and nowadays that's a tremendous, they have a tremendous impact across the world when it comes to wheat, when it comes to bread and substance like that. So we all start small, but I think that the important thing here and I want to talk to Katarina about this, because I know that they're such a great company. And what are they doing in order for them to bring more innovation, right, into their world? And I think that they're being very accepting and creative. And so love to hear a little bit more of what I know that Norway is a country that is trying to do a lot, and you know, spread the word about the good things. So.
Yeah, no, that's right, Natalia, and it's really a topic I would love to, you know, talk with you for a long time, since I have both the role of Chief Sustainability and also Chief Technology Officer for the group, and that's wonderful in my view, because it really combines, you know, many of the sustainability, let's say, solutions will come through a lot of technology, you know, innovations as well. So the bridging of those two is really interesting. So as I said before, you know, we have actually launched recently, a few weeks ago, a concept that we call Maui 4.0, where, you know, another concept, which is smart farming, is included, and that really aims to bring, you know, the big data, what you talked about as well, Kat, and this predictive analytics into this aquaculture world. And we are already having a very good experience. We have, you know, cameras with the artificial intelligence and trying to take a lot of data and really help us on our daily management of fish, and that is really predicting, you know, the behavior, you know, the appetite of the fish, helping us predict growth and, you know, biomass development, and also, you know, health related challenges, etc., to be able to inform our farmers on when to act. So we are really strong believers that, you know, this next step into bringing this technology is so important for us, for, you know, to bring the whole aquaculture and the production of food from the sea to the next level.
Yeah, let me just respond to a couple of things that Natalia brought up as well, because when we talk about the World Bank, I mean, when we work with governments, what governments are concerned about is the high level of data within the private sector and the lack of data in the public sector. That's a message we get very strongly. that governments are trying to work with systems. And this is all about environmental and social governance. This isn't just crop data. It's data related to the social side, to the livelihoods. It's data related to environmental impacts and so on. This is also back to the way the World Bank has been working a lot with governments, through these platforms that we're talking about. And this is why I'm asking our panelists like Ketan and Lewis, are you moving into emerging economies? Are you coming into these new frontier markets? These markets are growing, they're becoming more structured, there is more opportunity. The large multinationals, we talk about Nestle, we talk about Mondelez, we talk about Mars, these are all big food companies. Nestle is the biggest food company in the world. It has a huge footprint across the world. It's not just about supplying European markets, they supply local markets. And they're putting a lot more stress and a lot more requirement on the ESGs to them local businesses, not just international, which I think is really exciting. So what I wanted to explain was that when we structure an investment, when we structure a program, a lot of our work is also about capacity building of governments, capacity building of their systems and their processes. There is more and more requirement for the ICT and technology development and how to connect. What is really fascinating is there's less and less places in the world where there is no connection to the internet, where there is no connection to the network. Mobile phones have really connected a huge amount of opportunity across the world. I think someone's calling out, is that right? Sorry, someone came off mute. So just to explain that the World Bank is creating opportunity in the public sector. And the IFC is creating a lot of opportunity, within the private sector space, and they are investing, within tech companies, and they're doing a lot of work on these, developments of strategies and forums, with the World Bank as well. So I do stress to our participants, to reach out to us and reach out to, to the IFC so that we can go forward. I'm looking here through the chat. Please send me any follow-up questions or follow-up questions. I do note the point here about biochar, and soils. That's another area that we're looking at. Anybody who's connected, in the innovation space or ideas, please let the team know. We're also looking to connect further. So I just want to ask any more, if there's any final words from Ketan or Lewis or Katerina and then Natalia. So Ketan, have you got anything final that you want to say to us? Because we've really appreciated your participation and the work you're doing.
I just want to reciprocate that. Really appreciate this opportunity. And Chris, I think not just for UCO, but for a lot of small companies, it's, market expansion is just about finding the right partner who knows that market really well and who can make those connections and, basically help you bring that solution to that market. So appreciate the software. I'll definitely take you up on that. And, I'll be in touch with you to understand how could we benefit some of the smallholder farmers in Africa.
Lewis, over to you. Thank you, Ketan. Lewis, have you got any asks or recommendations or thoughts that you'd like to close with us?
Well, I will say similar to Ketan, right? This is about, for small companies like ours, about partnerships and for support from big brothers. And I will request from you, then, the World Bank, that you, as you are talking with these governments and you are supporting these policies, that you request innovation when they are applying or they are using your funds to help or to support better the policies that you try to implement. That they need to put also innovation on technology into their programs, so to assure that these kind of things can go forward and move forward.
No, thank you, Lewis. You're in a very, very strong growing space as well. I mean, blockchain is talked about a lot in the traceability systems. So this is something, we would be keen to discuss with you as well. Katerina, I mean, are we going to entice you to jump out of Europe and splash into the waters of Africa or also around Asia? I know you're global, but I'm trying to understand if you're going to do more investments.
Well, we are already operating in South Africa, Chris. So Chile is one of our farming countries, and if I might share a final note, I think digital technologies, they are already becoming a reality, for farmers, including seafood. What I think it's also a very important topic to consider is the need for competence in these areas. and that transition also into, both agriculture and also seafood. It's really, for all the youngsters who are watching us out there, I would really recommend, to go ahead and continue embarking on these, on the studying of these, technologies, because we really need that competence to yield the benefits of it very soon, hopefully. Thank you. You are muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the focus of the World Bank is related to jobs, of course, and it's related to youth engagement, the role of women, etc., etc. So we are always looking for being inclusive, and technology is an enabler. I wouldn't say it's the complete solution, but it's an enabler. So we really, really appreciate, the thoughts that you bring and the investments that you do as well. So thank you so much, and thank you for your participation. I'd like to follow up with you on some of the agribusiness strategies that we're planning as well as a World Bank group. IFC is very much part of our plans for the agribusiness space with governments and investments locally. Natalia, would you like to have any final words? I'd like to thank you for how you brought us all together and supported us, and you to draw the connections. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Well, the whole point here is, how do we bring innovative companies right into the discussion? How do we get people to really engage and know the institutions that we have, like the World Bank, that's trying to do like good things, right? And trying to get the younger generation involved. And these startups really are diverse in ages, diverse in backgrounds, diverse in global places. So I think the important thing here is, how do we figure out ways to reduce poverty and create jobs, and really enable those entrepreneurs to think globally and to help us solve the problems that we have in the world. So, thank you, Chris, for the opportunity to let me, be engaged and happy to bring all these folks together. And I hope that we continue this discussion. And, like we said, let's get governments to invest in entrepreneurship. And on that side, I think that's really important.
Well, I'm going to just say, on a personal note, everything starts small.
Exactly.
I'm not sure how many people here know about Olam International. I was sitting in, probably one of the biggest mistakes of my life, I was sitting in a meeting of a company that I used to work for that launched Olam International in Nigeria in 1989. And it started by buying cashew nuts in Nigeria. And now it's the fourth largest or fifth largest global agribusiness company in the world. So I was sitting there in Nigeria when it started. I left that to do something else, but I did come and work for Olam for a spell before the World Bank. So just to say that everything starts somewhere. And really hats off to Ketan and Lewis for the businesses they've started, because it's on your shoulders. You carry a lot of weight, a lot of responsibility. So thank you so much for that. And, we're very, very interested in all of this space. So on that, let me conclude. I've just noticed that I did miss one question. I do apologize. It was a related question to Ketan. On just for the sake of closure, could you answer this? Could you please tell us more about how weather data is processed for prediction models? Sorry about that. I missed that question, Ketan.
No problem. I mean, I think weather is one of the most important inputs when it comes to predictive models, because, the fact is each field is different. Each micro, we actually focus on microclimate. So, it's very important to identify, even within a farm, within a field, where the microclimates are. And, in this date and age of climate change, the way a farmer has farmed 5 years back may not be relevant anymore. So it's very important to understand what's happening with the climate today, what is forecasted in the future, and all these are very, very key inputs when it comes to predictive modeling.
Well, thank you very much. I'm just going to say climate is what we're talking about here in the US today. The US government, thankfully, is reconnected on the climate debate. So we're very, very pleased. But with President Biden that way, yes, let's get something happening, get some stability in the world. So on all of that note, I very much enjoyed the conversation. It's not been a presentation, it's been a conversation. So thank you so much. And thank you to the team, to Vivek and all the other colleagues that have really, to Maria Agnes particularly, who've brought this all together. So thank you so much. Let's keep connected and enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.